Well, hello, beautiful people. How we doing today? We are back at it once again with the new book, 3 Feet from Gold by Sharon Leckler, and we are into chapter 3. And just to give you guys a heads up, this is going to be a little bit of a longer chapter. I think it's 20 minutes total, just alone. So this is going to go a little bit over 20 minutes. So no analysis today, but we'll get into that tomorrow. So hope you guys enjoy. And let's go ahead and get you guys all set up so we can start with chapter 3. And we will get started here right now. Here we go. All right. There we go. And let's just get the recording going. Here we go.
Many successful people have found opportunities in failure and adversity that they could not recognize in more favorable circumstances. Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill.
Chapter 3. Planting the Seeds. Rapid knocking woke Greg from a sound sleep the next morning. He had been dreaming about Mia, imagining that she hadn't left him, that she would be lying next to him in the morning. She wasn't. Throwing on a robe, he stumbled through his empty apartment to the front door. Frank, the smiling doorman, greeted him. "This game for you," he said, holding out a package. When Greg reached for it, the doorman snuck a peek into the nearly empty room. He saw a few lawn chairs arranged around a small card table that Greg had borrowed from the building's recreation center. The space looked cold, uninviting, even depressing, far from the swank decoration of overpriced furnishings that had been there just a week earlier. "Thanks," the tenant snapped as he grabbed the package and turned inside. Intuitively, the doorman pulled his head back just in time to move his nose away from the slamming door. There was no tip forthcoming. On the other side of the door, Greg stopped himself. Normally, he wouldn't have given a second thought to his actions, but today something was different. He opened the door and called down the hallway. "Sorry about that, Frank. I have a lot on my mind, but that's no excuse." Frank turned, surprised. Greg said, "I appreciate you bringing this up." "You're quite welcome." Frank had regained his smile. He tipped his cap and disappeared out of sight around a corner. Tearing off the shipping paper, Greg was startled to discover a small notepad like the one Buckland had used for his reminders, along with a copy of the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the book that Buckland had shown him the day before. Inside the front cover, there was an airline itinerary and a short note. "Challenge. Use this ticket, meet with my good friend Don, and apply what he shares with you. Many receive good advice, yet few profit from it. Will you?" Greg thought about that. Few profit from it. What could possibly be the downside? He asked himself. Reading on, he found the information Buckland had provided about his friend, Don Green. Right away, he recognized that an incredible opportunity was knocking on his door. Immediately, he called his office, cleared his schedule, which didn't take long, and packed a bag. He couldn't believe Jonathon Buckland had actually sent him an airline ticket to visit a colleague after just meeting him once. This was one gift he wanted to be sure he appreciated. Just as he reached his door to leave for the airport, his telephone rang. The rarely used home phone, not his cell phone. With a sigh, he turned to answer it. "Hello," he said. "Greg, it's David." Those 3 words conjured up in Greg's mind a lifetime of memories, many of them wonderful images of family, youth, and friendship, but others more recent memories of pain, disappointment, heartache, and even disgust. He wanted to hang up the phone and leave, pretending he had not even answered, but he knew he could not. Holding the receiver to his ear, he did not respond at first. "It's David," the caller repeated, somewhat aggressively. "Hi, David. You're catching me at a bad time. I'm running out to the airport." "Got a big deal going, brother?" "Kind of. More in the research and development end of things right now." David Engel was not really Greg's brother, but he was the nearest thing. As a 3-year-old, David had been orphaned when his father and mother, close friends of Greg's own parents, had been killed in a horrific auto accident. The family took David into their home and eventually adopted him. Greg and David Engel were less than a year apart and had been friendly rivals for their entire lives. Friendly, that is, until the past few years when they had begun to drift apart over David's drinking. Well, aren't we on the cutting edge? Thinking outside the box, right, buddy? Most likely to succeed and all that crap. David spat sarcastically, slurring the word succeed. Have you been drinking? Greg hated asking that question and hated himself for asking it. But he had to. It was right there in front of his face, and he was angry. How dare this guy insert his problems and his failures into Greg's life? Brother or not, and he was not, after all. So what if I have? I can afford it. I may not be rich like you, but if I want to have a drink, what's to stop me? I know I can't stop you, Dave. Maybe I don't even want to, but I can end this conversation. It's going nowhere fast. Goodbye. Wait, I wanted to... Greg slammed down the phone and rushed out the door. He forced back the tears of rage that welled up behind his eyes. He would not let a pitiful drunk ruin his day or his life. After a 5-hour flight, Greg found himself in the most majestic landscape he'd ever seen. Slight insecurity tinged his sense of wonder as he pulled up to the headquarters of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, the organization that protects and promotes the wisdom of Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. He had skimmed through the book on the flight over and was anxious to learn more. Being a bit nervous and hoping not to duplicate his first encounter with a great leader, he was quickly set at ease by Don Green's friendly smile and relaxed demeanor. Hello, Greg. My name is Don, and I bet you're wondering why you traveled all this way to Wise, Virginia to meet a complete stranger. Well, not really a stranger, Greg said. After Mr. Buckland's introduction and my own research, I have to admit I was pretty eager to meet you. He also told me about Charlie Tremendous Jones and the importance of the books you read and the people you meet. From his new mentor's note and subsequent internet searches, Greg had learned that Don Green became a bank president at a relatively early age, went on to become a successful business executive with his own companies, and was a person who gave back generously to his community. He had received many honors along the way, such as an award for being the Citizen Volunteer of the Year, and he had served on the boards of both his local PBS station and the University of Virginia. More importantly, he was the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and in that coveted position was the person in charge of overseeing the entire operation. Charlie's advice is very good, and I'm sure Bucky was very kind with the information he provided you about me, Don said. One thing is for certain, I've read a lot of books and met a lot of people. I've studied the principles of success for almost 45 years and have always been interested in learning what makes people truly successful in their field. That is what the foundation is all about. Greg noticed that Green was not bashful about the praise that Buckland had given him. He was friendly and humble, but not disingenuously modest. Don motioned to a chair. Go ahead and have a seat. As they both sat down, the host continued. You must have impressed the old walrus for him to send you all this way. I assume you are on a quest for success. I think he knew I needed a lot of help, Greg said. I definitely want to be successful, but I just don't seem to be getting anywhere. Don was thoughtful for a moment before he responded. I'd like to share with you one of the main reasons, and maybe the most important one, why only 5% of people attain success and why the rest fail to reach their potential. That would be great because I want to become a millionaire. Well, Greg, you might wake up one day and discover that, in fact, you have accumulated $1 million, yet in reality, you still may not have achieved success. Greg looked at his host, somewhat bewildered. As writer Ben Sweetland stated years ago, success is a journey and not a destination. Success is a way of life that you will continue as long as you live. It's about discovering your ultimate purpose and pursuing it with everything you have and everything you do, Don Green stated with great conviction. The reason I help run the Napoleon Hill Foundation is because I want to help people discover their ultimate purpose. But the lesson I'm talking about and want to share with you today is about never giving up. and about having the courage not to quit even when you feel you have no other choice. Greg found himself physically pushing his body back into the chair in reaction to such a powerful statement. He remembered he had shared with Buckland his frustrations and his thoughts about giving up. "I'm here for a reason. I must pay attention," he prodded himself. Greg noticed the young man squirming. Realizing he must have hit a nerve, he continued in a more reassuring manner. "I see you have Think and Grow Rich in your hand. Let me tell you about the history of that book. It was first published in 1937 and has sold many millions of copies around the world. It has more life-changing lessons in it than any other book I've ever read. But the lesson of never giving up is one of the most important. I think you'll like this book, Greg, and it may even help you find some answers, or even better, inspire you to ask new questions." In the first chapter, Hill tells the story of R.U. Darby, who learned a very costly lesson that changed him for the rest of his life. Darby did what many people do. He quit when he felt overtaken by temporary defeat. Napoleon Hill knew that every one of us is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. Greg vaguely remembered something about the story from his brief look at the book. Now he pulled himself upright to write in his notepad. "The most common cause of failure is quitting." Pleased to see his visitor taking notes, Green continued. "Darby's uncle had been struck by gold fever. He traveled west to get rich in the mining business. This would-be prospector had many more hopes than solutions, you see, because he had not invested the time to learn how to do what he wanted to accomplish. He just wanted to find gold. He had not studied mining or learned from others about the proper way to mine or even the travails of mining. He simply staked a claim and went to work with his pick and shovel." Greg sat quietly, consuming every word of the story. He realized, to his surprise, that his usual internal dialogue of self-absorbed chatter had abated to a great degree. He was not thinking of Mia or David or his business worries or any other problem. Instead, he was really listening. Fortunately, after weeks of manual labor, Darby's uncle was rewarded with the discovery of gold, and lots of it. While it was a good problem to have, he quickly realized that he really wasn't prepared. He needed machinery to remove the enormous amount of heavy rocks and dirt that covered the shining ore. Understanding that machinery cost money that he didn't have, he carefully covered up the mine and traveled back to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland. He loudly proclaimed his great discovery and boasted of the tremendous wealth of gold that lay in the ground just waiting for his return. It didn't take long to persuade his family and friends to invest for the needed equipment. With money in hand, Darby's uncle invited his young protege to return with him to start digging for the promised treasure. When the first gold ore was retrieved, they excitedly shipped it to the smelter. Sure enough, it was high-quality ore and promised to be one of the richest gold discoveries in Colorado. Just a few more loads, and they would not only be able to repay their debts to their family and friends, but would have plenty of money to spare. Darby and his uncle were convinced they were about to make a huge fortune from their gold mine. Then tragedy struck. The gold simply disappeared. Just when their hopes were at their highest, the Darbys were crushed to reach the end of the rainbow. The proverbial pot of gold was no longer there. Greg set his pen down, mentally kicking himself. If he had actually invested the time to read the first chapter of the book, he would have already gotten it. Now, remember, they just wanted more gold. They had never studied the art of gold mining and had no true passion for the business of mining. So they didn't know what to do next except to keep digging. With their impatience and lack of knowledge, it wasn't long before they became totally frustrated and disillusioned. They had experienced instant success and lost patience when the job became more difficult. They kept digging but found no more ore. It wasn't long before their dissatisfaction got the best of them, and they decided to quit. Green paused to take a sip of water. Greg leaned forward so as not to miss a word of the story. Discouraged and defeated, Darby and his uncle sold both their mine and their equipment to a local junkman. For years, this junkman had been looking for an opportunity to break into the mining industry. He had studied mining for over a decade and had always believed that this was his destiny. The sale was completed with the exchange of a few $100s and the deed. With that, Darby and his uncle caught the next train and returned to their home in Maryland, ending their quest for gold. That's it? That's all? Greg asked. They just gave up? Yes, they just quit. But the story doesn't end there. You see, the junk man was passionate about the idea of mining. Remember, he was just waiting for the right opportunity. He was also smarter than most people gave him credit for. With the deed in hand, he hired a mining engineer to inspect the claim, and together they discovered what is known as a fault line. The engineer explained that gold ran in long veins, and that the previous owners had simply drilled through one side of the vein and come out the other. The engineer explained that if the junk man were to go back and dig in the other direction, perpendicular to where the Darbys had made their first discovery, he would most likely tap back into the treasure. The new owner, the junk man turned gold miner, followed these simple instructions, and sure enough, he hit one of the largest pockets of ore ever uncovered, a mere 3 feet away from where the Darbys had quit mining. The junk man retrieved millions of dollars in gold from the site. He succeeded where Darby and his uncle had failed because of two things: his determination to fulfill his life's purpose of becoming a gold miner, and, of course, his willingness to seek expert advice. Don paused to let the message sink in. And what do you think Mr. Darby did when he heard about the success of the junk man? Greg said, he probably just gave up on life. Many people would, but RU didn't let this failure go to waste. He learned his lesson about stopping 3 feet from gold and went on to apply it to his work in the insurance business. Sure, he was heartbroken when he heard about the success the junk man had achieved at his personal expense, but he never forgot that the real reason he lost a fortune was because he had decided to give up too soon. He dedicated his life to never again accepting defeat. With his new never quit attitude, Darby went on to create his own fortune in the insurance industry. He repaid his friends and family from his new fortune, and, importantly, he also started sharing his story so others could learn from his mistake. That's a powerful story, the young visitor commented. Don added, before great success comes, you will surely meet with temporary defeat. When people are overtaken by these feelings, the easiest and perhaps most logical thing to do is to quit. Quitting is exactly what the majority of people do. Greg quickly wrote in his notepad, before great success comes, you will surely meet with temporary defeat. Green finished his thoughts by saying, there are 3 things you want to remember after you select your path. Greg scribbled Don's words. Select your path and then, 1. Seek the counsel of those who have expertise outside your own. 2. Never quit 3 feet from gold. 3. When you become successful, you will find others whom you can mentor. Share with them the lesson you have learned. Remember this, Don added. The reason most people quit is because they fail to unearth their definite life purpose. They don't have something worth fighting for. Once you discover this truth, then you will gain what Hill called stickability. Listening intently, Greg was still puzzled. All he could manage was, huh? The Darbys quit because they were not committed to the outcome. They were simply chasing the dollars, the same way you were mentioning about wanting to become a millionaire. The junk man, in contrast, always knew in his heart of hearts that one day he would catch his break and become a gold miner, and so he did whatever he needed to do until that opportunity arose. In other words, he had stickability. It's the difference between being interested and being committed. Greg wrote in his notebook, there is a difference between being interested and being committed. Think of it this way, Green said. Imagine going to a social event where you meet a fine-looking young lady and you find yourself interested in her. Compare that to meeting the love of your life and getting married. So now you are committed. Eventually, troubles will arise. They always do. Greg envisioned how he had recently come home to his empty apartment. When times get tough, you may run from the situation or, as in this case, from the person you are merely interested in. Whereas with a marriage or a more committed situation, you are more likely to seek a resolution and stick it out because you're dedicated to the relationship. Boy, can I relate to that, Greg interjected. The Darbys quit at the first sign of struggle because they had no passion for the business. The junk man, on the other hand, loved his life, was committed to finding the opportunity to become a gold miner, and was eventually rewarded for sticking with his vision. Writing in his book, Greg added a new powerful message with one word in giant, bold print. To succeed, you must have stickability.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, you
Nikolai?
guys. Well, that was a bit of a long one. Thanks for hanging in there. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we'll come back tomorrow. We'll do a little bit of an analysis on this. Dissect all this. This is great. Definitely take some notes if you haven't already. There's some great nuggets in here. Hope you guys are learning that stickability, just to never quit, and definitely come back tomorrow. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Make sure that you hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of this great content. And until next time, you guys make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.